So I had like some issues on my hip that were coming again regularly, like chronic stuff. And then I just went to run like already 3 months ago or something. Everybody around me was saying, "Yeah, I'm running and I'm doing this long in this like amount of time," and uh, I was like, "Fuck, I need to run too." Like I feel challenged, and so I went to run like a wild guy, and I didn't stop. And in my mind, I was like, "Shit, maybe I'm not run that long." Because I fixed a goal, right? I'm gonna run from here to there and coming back.
Mm.
And half of the way, I was finding excuse to myself to stop. Like, yeah, maybe it's the first time. I shouldn't do the whole thing. And just because I thought like that, at the end, I start running even faster because I couldn't accept the fact that I was about to not do the whole thing, and I
Mm.
mean to quit. And so I run like crazy, and I start feeling some pain right away in my hip, and then the pain went to my lower back, and then I had like both feet with inflammations, and one of them stayed for. I mean, it's still with inflammation. I'm taking medics because of
Antibiotica?
that. Yeah, and
Uh,
so I went to see what it is, and I'm waiting for the results. And next week I have another appointment, and we'll see. But yeah, that's
yeah,
that
yeah.
was it. I don't know exactly what it is.
It's a art to run actually proper. If you like, that's something that you need to learn
Mm.
because it's not something we do. So I have some friends that are really into this, but they actually had to learn to run. So certain lean, and you got to stay on the ball of your feet and all that jazz. I hate running, but I should do it. I'm doing yoga, and the last time I practiced here at my place, I was doing a stretch where I was standing up and holding out my leg, and my knee buckled,
Shit.
and I had such severe pain. And the strange thing is, there was actually happening in my right knee. I had my left leg up,
Mm.
stretched out. Um, it happened to my right knee, but then it was like that it was in the left knee, which is super strange. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I've just been like, I've been really just pacing myself down, after that, because I just don't want to. That's every time I get hurt, because I always practiced a lot. I did a lot of calisthenics. I used to be like really buff.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, I was doing all the muscle ups and the planks and all these things. Um, and I hurt my shoulder.
Yes.
And that was because I saw a young kid, like in the end of my practice that day when I got hurt. Um, I saw some young kids that came and they were starting to do some muscle ups, and I was like, shit, let me just do one more. And then I did one, boom, and I messed up my left shoulder,
Yeah.
and then
Plus,
I just stopped.
shoulders are very sensitive. That's one
Yeah,
of the
knees and
muscles. Yeah,
shoulders.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, man. And plus, with age, it takes long to recover, man. It's fucked up.
Gotta be careful, man.
Yeah. Did you try to hang up? I heard that it's very it works really well for the pain shoulders. If you hang up like this, in the bar.
Yeah, I do that every day. Actually, I
Yeah.
have a bar hanging most of the time that you can just click on.
Yeah.
So actually, most of the time when I walk past it, I always stretch,
Yeah.
just
It's good. Yeah.
yeah. So this has been very helpful, also for the lower back. But I would say that the best investment that I've done in myself for years and years has been Astanga Vinyasa Yoga. That I went to India and I practiced for a year almost. I stayed there for first a month, no, 2 weeks, 1.5 month, 5 months, and then a month. So yeah, less than a year, but 8 months, yeah, give and take. I practiced yoga in India, in Mysore, and that was a phenomenal investment in myself. But then the thing is that you come back home and you get into like the rhythm of things here, and then you don't get to practice as much as you do there.
Yeah, yeah.
Real challenge. Yeah.
Actually, the last episode that I released was with a yoga master from here. She's
Oh,
been doing for almost 30 years, and
like,
it was super interesting because I was sharing all my experience. I mean, I don't have as much as that, but and we made a lot of like comparisons between dance and yoga.
it's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. You know, I feel I did a lot of things. I also practiced silat in first in Japan and then in Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines. And for me, it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same as hip hop. You have some people that have a common interest that's connected to movement and developing yourself as an individual. So that I have the same approach that I have with dance to learn these things. And I guess that's one of the beautiful things about dance is that when you understand that you can be good at this, you can be good at anything that you put your mind to.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that we spoke about it is the difference between other art forms or um, sports or whatever is that in yoga you have this consciousness of therapeutical. I mean, is you know that you are doing something good for yourself. In a, how can I say, almost it's like a therapy, you know. Yeah, and you have that within the dance, but it's not conscious. You dance for other reasons, for I don't know, to express yourself or whatever. But you're not you don't have that conscious that you are doing great things for your mind and body when you dance. And people, a lot of people when they start yoga is exactly for those reasons, because they feel a need to work on their mind and their soul, and it's for different reasons. So there is like that consciousness around yoga that we don't have in dance, or I mean some kind of sports or whatever. uh, yeah, so I find that really interesting, and that's exactly the reason that made me want to try yoga first, was because by because I'm a b-boy too. I knew that I was doing very similar positions that I was doing for different reasons, and I was like, that's so strange that some people are doing very similar positions that I'm doing, but they are using them for almost, can I say, like healing themselves in a certain way. So I want to do more about the moves that I was doing already. Like, what are those moves doing to me? Beside the way that I use them in dance. I mean, so yeah, it was super interesting actually.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, like, um, actually, yoga is meditation, and the primary series are a prayer to the divine, whatever that is for you, or that I feel that's a personal connection between or whatever you believe. With martial arts, there's a different reasons, there's a purpose behind the
Exactly.
movement as
Mm.
well.
Mm.
But actually, I would say that with dance, the circle or the cipher is a sacred, ritual that goes back as long as people have existed. Now we're just doing it with, this type of movement and trend that is around now for, you know, a number of years. And And it is a form of, I would say, dance is a great way to connect with yourself. It's a great way to release and also to understand yourself better. Um, so when I go out, people dance with different purposes. People, some are, hungry for fame. Somebody is hungry for attention and wealth. It's different from person to person. I guess that it's very when you're young that you want to have attention, especially from your peers. It's great to get it from your elders or mentors, but the most important thing is to get it from your peers. As you grow older in life, the purpose behind this thing, if you're still dancing, which not a lot of people are doing actually, because um, they will get a job, they will get a career, they will maybe get kids, and the priority changes. You can't just, go clubbing every weekend. Uh, that's kind of connected to being young. But, it's still, of course, a possibility and a thing that you can prioritize as an outlet in your life. But most people that I talk to that are dancing, they just want to get famous. They just want to make sure that they can provide themselves, with a certain lifestyle
Yeah,
through, financial, gain from
yeah,
dancing. And I understand that, um, and there's also certain individuals in the culture that they look up to that does exactly that. And then on the flip side, you have cultural ambassadors, you have tradition bearers, um, and that preserves the culture, and has a different purpose behind. Personally, what I do when I go out and I teach and I share, it's just to uplift and inspire. That's my purpose with what I'm doing now. I'm not so concerned about being famous
yeah.
personally. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally understand that. But see that was exactly my point when I was comparing dance with yoga. Is when you describe the cipher context. You say it as you see it as a sacred thing, but people when they are going to ciphers and they are going to get down, they don't think about the sacred thing, the sacred part of it. The same way people, most of the dancers don't practice dancer to feel healthier. They do it to express themselves. But you are gonna be more healthier if you dance mentally, both mentally and
Excuse me.
physically. So that was what I was trying to say when I said that in yoga there is that consciousness. Once you do it, I mean, you do it probably first of all to feel healthier. Um, so yeah, but that's true, man. A lot of people are dancing to get famous. Actually, I mean, it starts right away. I can tell that it was pretty much my case in my school when I was a kid and I started b-boying back then. It was to get a reputation in my school. I don't know how much I fell in love by the art form right away. I mean, I was 8 years old, 9 years old. I don't know. So it was a reputation thing. It was style back then. I mean, being a b-boy in my city was everything. If someone will
Mm,
consider you a b-boy, I mean, it's done. You're
mm,
hip. You're in the move. You're protected. So yeah, it starts right away like this. And nowadays that, I mean, people. I accept that people want to get famous, but in some way they know that to get famous they need to practice a lot, and so I feel that the real ones are gonna at the end they're gonna still need to look at the truth. The other ones I don't care. Fuck them. I mean,
yeah, I mean, like, um, I guess the truth will always come out at some point. The good thing right now, I feel like I'm not trying to knock on anybody or their
mm,
approach to dance or
mm,
whatever. But there is a need and a curiousness from the youth to know where things come from,
Mm.
what's the story behind it. There's a curiosity that's very healthy for the culture that you and I are in. I think the beautiful thing about the hip hop culture and dance as a universal language is that it brings people together from across the world through artistry, even if they can't speak each other's language, they don't know how to speak English or any other language, they can still communicate through their artistry, in this case dance.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing. And I feel that that's also something the world needs a little more of, that people get together. And then you could say the same thing about yoga or about martial arts.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
It does exactly the same thing. So that's why I
Exactly.
used it as a cross reference
Yes.
earlier, because it's sort of the same type of, it could be, I mean, it could be football.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what
yeah.
I'm
No,
saying?
no, no. But I totally understand what you mean. Yeah, yeah, exactly. But man, I need to talk to you about something.
Sure, go
Because
ahead.
in my episode with Pilok, it was in French, so you probably didn't understood. We were talking about. I don't know exactly what was the context, but at some point I said, yeah, because during the 90s, people were not paying that much attention to locking, and then I said that I cannot remind a battle. I mean, seeing a locker in a like important battle, because what is happening, what it was happening back then, it was that in every b-boy crew there was a popper or a locker, right? But mostly poppers. So at some point during the battle, the popper were getting down, and that was it. You couldn't find like popping battles or locking battles or popping events or locking events. It was hip hop parties, and people were going down, and everything was happening. But I totally forgot Battle of the Year '95,
Mm,
where you when you got in third place,
yeah.
which was very important and pretty unique, because you were like three stand up dancers and one b-boy, if I'm not wrong, right?
Us two B-boys,
Two b-boys,
Storm's brother, Speedy, and Kenneth Wildcat from out
Wildcat,
of this world.
exactly.
Yeah, two B-boys, and the rest was, I think it was me, Steen, Thomas, and then we had this guy from LA, Tron. His name was Tron. So
And
that was the crew, and yeah, it was.
and what happened was crazy, because you guys won the third place against a b-boy crew, and you were mainly doing popping and locking with
Yeah.
routines and all that shit. And the routines as you did came like years after. I mean, in the b-boying world, with the kind of combination that you were doing and all that. I mean, we were not seeing that much that kind of work. So what happened? I mean, everybody recognized that Out of Control was one of the first crews doing locking that way. So how did it happen?
All right, so in the 80s, you had there was a couple of guys that called themselves Freeze Frame, a gentleman called Dave Belgrave and Warren Crooks from London. They were, and there was another guy, I can't remember his name, but he was in and out of the crew very fast. Excuse me. So uh, they had an agency in London, as I recall, that pushed them out to do shows in Scandinavia. And then this guy I can't remember the name of, he it didn't really work out. So they brought in another friend of theirs that they went to school with, a gentleman called Anthony Edwards.
Okay.
Um, and then I think they had to change the name, so they changed the crew name to Split Second. And they started to do. They were very. They did really well. They had a manager also in Denmark that was, helping them to get shows. So that lasted for a while, and then they got out of this contract. And there was a place in Copenhagen called Thomas Beheile, where everybody that was into hip hop, it was a youth club in the smack in the middle, in the center of Copenhagen. Um, and there you had a lot of people practicing breaking, popping, mostly breaking and popping, and DJing and graffiti. And they were all like sitting and writing on their like pads and no their papers and stuff. Um, and in that environment, Split Second met two other guys, a guy called Steen and Thomas, and Kenneth as well. Kenneth is Wildcat. And then they got an opportunity to do a TV show called Balladen that was going on every Saturday prime time in Copenhagen, an entertainment program. And they became the house dancers,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
act that was there. And that's kind of how they got their name out. And they, at the same time, you were watching BET, Yo Rap MTV with Fab Five Freddy,
Yeah.
and in all these videos, you saw the same level as you saw in this Danish program from this crew that decided to call themselves Out of Control now. They were flying under that name. So these guys, Dave Belgrave, Warren Crooks, and Anthony Edwards were very instrumental, especially Anthony, to the development of this particular lock and flavor
Mm.
that Out of Control was doing. And their their dance background was very different from, let's say, the US experience. They
Yes.
had these clubs that they were going to all the time, where they were doing this underground jazz style called boogie. They called it boogie. And there was also reggae and ska, as I've learned later on, and all these styles and that whole like flavor, and they were very dressed very proper when they went to the clubs and stuff. They merged that with the lock-in. There were like there was more people in London. There was a guy called Mark Dias that is
Mm.
completely unreal. Like he's in such a great physical shape. He would be running up the walls and going into split and sliding under the tables in the split, come up and start locking. There was a gentleman called Path and Jimmy Williams as well
Yes.
that taught on Pineapple for a number of years.
Yes.
But he changed his style, I saw later on, to the original style. So they had like a unique approach to it that we learned in Out of Control through um, Warren Crooks, Dave Belgrave, and Anthony
Anthony.
Edwards.
Yeah.
So that's the benefactors behind the success of Lock-In within that crew, and that's why we look different, because we learned it from these guys. That was from the black community as well in London.
But you already knew that he was locking, or did he? Were
No,
you
so
using the term already, or?
so like my first experience with Lock-In was actually watching Out of Control. I was only like 14, 15 years old. And later on, I looked at breakdance and breaking those
Mm,
movies,
mm.
and I saw Ozone and
Yeah.
Shabba-Doo
Yeah.
and those guys, Pop and Pete do Lock-In, and I was like, wow, that's Lock-In. That's like where it really comes from. But and I was I was very excited about what I saw from these guys from London, and it didn't look like something that belonged to a time. It looked like something from the future. It was maybe one of the most exciting things that I've seen in my life. Um, I
That's super
remember I was
interesting.
sitting at parties, watching these guys just getting down and doing things that just looked completely unreal, you know. So yeah, that was my introduction to Lock-In. Then later on in '99, I met Don Campbell Lock. I was living in Los Angeles, for a while. And in that period, I met Don Campbell, and I met him in person and saw what he was doing, but wasn't so like um, I don't want to sound like disrespectful in any way, but it didn't impress me in the same way
Of
as it
course.
did the style that I saw
But
before.
what didn't impress you? The is dance back then or the original format? What did you saw exactly? You saw him dance,
I was
or did you saw the footage from the 70s? What did you saw? When did you saw the footage from the 70s the first time? Actually,
I think I saw it like in the early 90s, in I think in the 90s, 91 or something like that, or 90, no, probably 93. I think in 93 I saw, because there that was not out. There was people that had tapes
mm, mm,
recording,
mm,
so like you didn't have access like you have now. So I think, to be honest, I think it was in 93 that I saw it first.
mm.
Um, and I also, I mean, like I saw All Right with Janet Jackson and Control, which had Locken in it. Jesse
Of
J
course,
was in that, and Renee, and what is his name? Anthony Thomas,
yes.
photographer. So and it was really cool, and that was super inspiring as well. And I really liked that. Like that, I was like completely dumbfounded. I was like, that's so dope. So, but all these things had, a huge influence. And keep in mind that I was 14, 15 years old. I was just like, wow, this is
Yeah.
just super amazing. And then leading up to 95, Out of Control as a group had dissolved. The people from London had gone back home. In 93, they split up as a group. So it was just Steen and Kenneth that was left. Thomas had moved to Germany, and made a connection with Junius Lee Brickhouse that now has Urban Artistry in DC. That's another story and
Yeah,
avenue.
yeah,
And also how this flavor of Locken have come to the US
yeah.
and practice there now. But so we decided to, me and Steen became my mentor for a number of years. We practiced together like every day for like 4 hours.
Hmm.
And and Storm traveled up a lot to Copenhagen to connect with us and learn from us.
Mm.
So he was around quite a lot in that time frame between 93, 94, 95. And so we got to Battle of the Year, and it was a scary experience, man, to be honest with you. Like,
Really?
I was
Why?
very scrawny, I was very skinny, young, man, and or a kid, and you had all these like muscle back, like with hollow, just hollow backs walking around looking super.
Yeah, but you look pretty secure.
Yeah, I mean, like when I was dancing, I was fine, but like when I was moving around in the crowd, I remember I got outside. I don't know why I went outside, but then I needed to get back in, and I was completely squashed in the entrance between all these like huge dudes. And I remember there was this like security guard with like a shield, and he even had a baton and everything. I was
No
just like,
shit.
what is this place? I mean, like, you know, I mean, you would never see that now, but that's what it was like.
Exactly.
The whole energy in the room, it was so powerful. It was so
Yeah.
energy was so high. And I remember when we did our routine, it was like the people just broke the sound wall.
Yeah, it
And
was crazy,
we had
man.
no idea, or I had no idea about how good we actually were, or what type of impact that we would make. But what Storm did for us is that he invited us into his program called Viva,
Yeah.
and we did our
Freestyle,
routine.
right?
Yeah, yeah, he had this TV program, so we did our routines, and we had a singer with us as well called Victor. He was beatboxing and singing, and that had a profound effect on all of Germany. Um, and then you also had Thomas there. He lived in Heidelberg, and had connected with juniors.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a turning point, but it was really due to the practice that and the influence before, not only from Warren Crooks, Dave Belgrave, and Anthony Edwards, but also from Damon Frost, that was the mentor of Thomas and Steen in their poppin'.
Okay.
And so he was dancing with a gentleman called Bebop back then,
Mm.
and very instrumental to the whole development in Stockholm and in Sweden.
So then you go to LA, you see Don, and you're like, okay, not that impressed.
Um, what I saw, like in, of course, there was phenomenal lockers. I remember I was at this event in 2000 in Los Angeles where I met a lot of the people from out there, and I think there was a lot of amazing lockers, and they were really, really good.
Mm.
That was inspiring. But then I came back to Denmark from LA, and then shortly after that, I moved to France. Now, my experience in France, that was also a huge development phase in my journey as becoming a good dancer. I saw that now everybody was dancing the same way. Everybody was locking the same way. There was a notion that you should do it a certain way to be true to the art form.
In
That was,
what year? In what year?
I think it was actually in 2003, 2002, 2003. There was a wave of,
But like in the original way, you mean? Like
yeah.
in the 70s? Okay. And that
It
bothers you?
No, it didn't bother me. But what wasn't so interesting for me is that now everybody was just dancing the same way. They were just cloning the original style because now this information had become more accessible,
Of course.
and everybody was like, if you want to do locking, you need to do it like this.
Exactly.
So it became very textbook, and everybody was. I didn't see the individuals. I couldn't really see people. I could just see that they were doing something that was already done. They didn't really add something to it, and that, of course, came from a place of respect and to pay homage to the original lockers.
Yeah,
And there's nothing
but the
wrong
thing
with that.
is, the what I can tell right now by listening to you, and based on my story, the main difference that I see is that you had already some kind of, let's say, current I mean, how can I say, some solid information. Okay, you got guys like the ones that you just said that came from UK and all that were teaching you, right? For most of us, I mean, for me, no one. I saw you in '95. I saw some locking routines in b-boying events. I mean, during the showcase, in for example, like in Battle of the Year, you had like the showcase parts and then the battles. In the showcase, you could see some locking or some kind of stuff were looking like locking routines, but that was it. I mean, for me, until '99, it was pop locking. I had no fucking idea that popping was one thing and locking was another. For me, it was just something cool to do on top. And when it comes to me, I just wanted to be a complete dancer. In this context of battling, I mean, I was watching people like Storm and shit. I was like, okay, he's doing everything. I need to do everything. Plus, in Portugal, that no one has any information. So I had this responsibility to fill that gap and know about everything to then be able to share it here in my country. So, and then this guy from Brazil told me that popping was one thing and locking was another. I was like, come on, you're full of shit. You don't know nothing. And so what I mean is that then in 2000, 2001, 2002, when the information start to arrive, we were, I mean, for my generation, it was like, okay, that's
Mm,
the dance that we were trying to do, because we didn't have like you said. I mean, what I was trying to say in the beginning is that you had mentors, right? You had people over you, sharing with you and teaching you in some way. I didn't. I had like
mm,
footage on videos. I had no idea what I was doing, and it was pretty much like this everywhere. I mean, when I met Pilok in 2004 at the B-Boy Summit and other people. But I mean, when I met Pilok, I already brought Sugar Pop to Portugal, because so I already knew some stuff, but I still didn't saw uh, that much footage when it comes to the original style, right? Sugar Pop told me about Show Train and all those things, but I didn't really saw the original lockers yet,
mm,
and it's only in Paris in 2004 that I saw it, and it was like you're trying to find something for that long, and finally you are able to catch the original thing, so you try to do it.
mm. And I think that
So
is the
it's
case for,
it's
yeah, sorry.
different.
Sure. And I think that's the case for most people from that time. They were searching, they saw a few people that did something they thought was really cool and that we called locking. And then, all of a sudden you have access to the lockers, the original lockers, or somebody from that, crew or whatever. And it becomes exciting, and it's like, okay. So I think, out of the curiousness and also the the need to do it the right way, even here in Sweden, uh, people said, yeah, we used to like do it the way that Out of Control did it. That is called the London Lock-in flavor. Not by me, but just by the community, because this particular flavor came out of London.
Mm.
Um, but then they got into the original style, and now there's a curiousness to get to understand the term, not the terminology, but like the body mechanics of this flavor, because it's just a different approach. Some of the techniques are a little bit different, and how to generate energy and all these things. So um yeah, it's just different. And I think I think what happened for me was that I got into locking that way, and then I saw the original lockers through movies, and eventually I met the original lockers, and the creator Don Campbell Lock, um, and I learned like from everything. But when everybody was dancing the same way, I sort of lost interest in locking for a while, and I got into house dance. My first experience with house dance was in 1996 when I went to a club called the Vinyl in New York. And I was completely dumbfounded, and I was taken by the music as well. I was waiting in line outside this club, all dressed up, because in my culture and when you go clubbing, you had to do that to actually get in. But everybody else in line was like in sweatpants and, sneakers and knapsacks and, hoodies. And then they got in, they started stretching. And after half an hour, 40 minutes, the place just exploded completely. And I was presented with a completely new language, if you like, of dance and music, and I was dumbfounded. I was completely blown away, and I was like, I want to learn this. But that wasn't so easy, because I was in New York with another guy that was a childhood friend of mine and not a dancer. So he didn't have the same interest as me in this, and I didn't know where to turn or go. even though I was in Out of Control, we didn't really have a network as of yet in New York at that time.
Mm.
So, but the year after, not the year after, same year later that year, we went back to New York with Out of Control, and we went to a 5-5 soul party where we met Shanice and Shannon Whichway and Tony McGregor. Say Cool was the bouncer at the club. Funny enough. And so we got to connect with these people that I became really good friends with later on in the beginning of the 2000s. And so the same time period that I was talking about where I lost interest
Yeah.
is when I went to New York at that time with my uh, girlfriend, Sonia Solshine, that was also into Locking and House.
Shit.
Uh,
Stop. You did Sonia?
yeah, we were together for about 5 years. We were
No,
actually,
Sonia is one of my best friends. I had no idea. That's crazy. Cool,
yeah.
man.
So
Okay.
we had a long relationship, and we lived together. I moved to France, and I stayed with her, obviously, and me and her went to New York and connected with the community out there. And then when we got back, we went again and became really good friends with Shannon Whichway and a guy called Pee Wee, and stayed with them. And Michelle Mitch and
Yes.
Ricky Soul also
Yes.
came with us, and we all stayed with Pee Wee and Shannon Whichway and practiced, and that's how that was like it was a change in the connections across the world because mostly the most interest in that community came from Japan because from New York, many dancers had traveled to Japan and taught, especially dance fusion and elite force
Yes.
had traveled out to Japan and influenced the community out there like in a number of ways through dance. Um, so we were the first to really show like interest, and then we built a bridge between France. We brought Shannon Whichway. I did together with a man called Uka,
Mm.
brother, um, and we did a workshop in Paris with him. And then I connected Martin Ferretti that been doing Street Star for the last 15 years in Sweden, which is a huge competition. Connected him with the culture also in 2003 in New York. So he started to bring over Tony McGregor, Say Cool, Marjorie Smart, and
Mm.
also people from France. I connected him also with the community in France.
Mm.
And then, everything just exploded in Sweden. And now you have so many phenomenal dancers
Dope, man.
in Norway, in Sweden, yeah, and Denmark too.
Dope, man. I was listening to you, but I didn't interrupt you. But when we were talking about locking in UK, do you have any idea if they got an influence from Northern Soul or not at all?
Yeah, they did. Northern Soul, definitely. They were also looking at the Nicholas brothers and the Barry brothers.
Yeah, of
Was a
course.
huge inspiration to them. Like one of the movies that they got inspiration from to create their lock and style was also the movie called Penitentiary,
Mm.
um, which is an old movie from the 70s, a prison movie
Mm.
where you have some brothers in the prison yard
Mm.
throwing down a lock-in routine, and that specific set of movements they adapted into their style, and they merged it with what they already had. What they did and what is a little bit different from what you see on the original style is that it's very extended, it's very big.
Mm.
Uh, they they were all in phenomenal shape, and like for me as a kid when I was watching these people, they were like superheroes. I
Yeah.
was I was so blown back. I was just like, wow, it's so I tried to emulate that in my dance for a long time. Yeah.
What happened? So between that period where you got like a little bit like, okay, everybody's looking the same. Then you discover house. You do all what you just explained in the house community, and then years later, I'm gonna spin for one of the just the book qualifications that that's when I met you. You're doing it again and you're locking again. I was like, what the fuck? That's locksmith like right there. And
Yeah,
then
that's
we
true.
talk. What happened?
Yeah, yeah. So I got into house, and I really loved the music, and I really loved the. It was just so vast, and it was free. It made me feel free. And one of the things that I enjoy in life is to be in constant development.
Hmm.
So I felt that that kind of, gave me that opportunity to be in constant development because it wasn't so set. Like locking can be a little bit like um, restricted.
Hmm. Hmm.
I do see, or at least I felt like that at that time. Anyway, so yeah, so I was doing house for a long time and hip hop. I love hip hop as well.
Hmm.
So I was learning these, styles, and then I had some young people from yeah, we are in Scandinavia, but from Copenhagen that asked me, "Can you please practice with us?" And I think that was in 2013. So I said, okay, sure, and I started to practice with a young man called Ayub, and it was mostly house, but he had in his social circle another a friend that was really interested in house, but also in lock, and his name was Lofty.
Okay.
Um, and so that was the guy that I was
Yeah.
entering
Yeah.
competition with. So he asked me if I could help him to learn. And at the beginning, it seemed like a lost cause, like he couldn't, get it. But sure enough, after a little while, he really got it and grew. Um, and then the opportunity presented itself. There was a prix Justable in Copenhagen organized by Mary Kay
Yes.
and her organization. So I was like, you know what? Let's just do this. And that was the first time, excuse me, in a long time, I think maybe 10 years, that I decided to enter a competition and do locking. And then ever since, I have contributed every time I can to be a part of the Justable pre, competitions around. When they were near to my home, I would enter with someone and just contribute, and have fun. And that kind of sparked my interest for doing locking again. But before that, in 2010, Junius Brickhouse, that's the founder of Urban Artistry in DC. Um, his mentor is actually Thomas Herut
Hmm.
from Out of Control also.
Yes.
Um, so he got to learn about all of us um, and everything that we did from pop into lock and mind you this, he grew up with this. That was something that they just did even before it was called anything. It was just like that's what we do, at home, in his community. So he's been dancing since he was 5 years old, and then in his adult life, he meet this gentleman called Thomas Haywood in Heidelberg that shows him, something that comes from his own community, like, but in a different way. So he was curious, and they also connected as, just human beings. Um, so he like all the way forward to 2010, he actually brought Damon Frost, Steen, myself, and Anthony Edwards to Washington D.C. and Thomas, but he missed his flight.
Oh
Um,
shit. Okay.
and then that was a chance to influence Ryan and Richard
Hmm.
that have taken the lock style, to heart, and just ran with it.
Mm.
And that's 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
they're really good now.
Man,
Like,
that was also very, like, it was a huge surprise, and super interesting. I was really not expecting, when I went to Sweden to the master camp, and Russia and Future were there, and suddenly I didn't talk to them that much during the week, but then when we were going back to Stockholm to catch our planes, and we were in the same car, so we start talking like during, I don't know, 2 hours or whatever. And they told me, I was like, they told me that they were from Washington, and then when they told me that your guys were their main influence, I was like, that's crazy. I mean, they're from the US and their influence are from Europe. And so I didn't understood the connection at first, and now that is super interesting to have your side of the story. But the thing is, man, in this culture, we always defend the fact that you should be unique. I mean, otherwise, if you don't bring nothing new to the game, otherwise, I mean, people are gonna forget you forever. You will never be reminded if you look like someone else. I mean, no one is gonna talk about you. I mean, no one is gonna talk about the guy who was looking like locksmith. They are gonna talk about locksmith, right?
mm,
Uh, but at the same time, like you said before, like in 2003 4, when we got the information, everybody was trying to dance like the originals. But what we forget is that first, they were all different from one to another. I mean, Mr. Penguin had a totally different style than Don, and so on. And I don't care if he's right or wrong or whatever, but the thing is that the info came to Europe the way it came during the 80s. We didn't know much about it. We were actually learning by watching movies and whatever. But because we didn't have someone to teach us, we start to doing in our own way. I mean, so, and for me, I mean, and a lot of cool stuff came out of it that we should keep in. I mean, and not
absolutely.
totally forget. I mean, I don't see nothing wrong by being different, as long as you respect the original format, and you study the right information. Uh, I see being different as an advantage, actually, but I don't know.
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's very important to acknowledge that this culture emerged from the Black and Latin community in New York to begin with, and the other contributors, like, now we're talking about Larkin, that was based out in on the West Coast in the U.S. Um, it is extremely important to acknowledge that, and when all that is said, I also think that it's important to remember that the culture only exists and persists because everybody is contributing. So everybody's contribution matters, um, as long as it is with respect, um, and I think that things needs to develop all the time. That's the beauty of this culture. It's in everything. You can go anywhere in the world and you can say hip hop, and even if you don't speak the same language, people will not. You can go to Bhutan, which is a tiny little country, uh, very excluded from everywhere else, and they have a hip hop culture. It's amazing. It's a global phenomenon now. I think. Um, what happens sometimes with things that becomes huge is that the people that was the benefactors and the creators are being forgotten. If we think about somebody like Don Campbell Locke, that was the creator of Lock-in. He didn't own a house. He didn't own a car. He didn't have anything. He was actually a poor guy in his time right before he passed. And I don't think that maybe wealth necessarily has to determine if you are a good or bad, but it's food for thought, and I think it's important to think about where these things come from originally and always be respectful to that, regardless of what you do. There's a value system in this culture that's also forgotten, where things have been passed down from person to person. Um, but this is not so longer important, especially for young people, because they just go online and they see something and they copy it and they like it. And, yeah, I taught myself. I didn't learn from anybody. This is like, the word out there from a lot of young people. And that I understand that that can sit wrong with certain individuals in the culture, that they're gonna feel like, wow, you learned from yourself, like, do you understand how this thing came around? And it's the respect for elders is also in the wind, which is something that's really important, especially in the Black community and in the Latin community. There's a value system there that's actually reflected into the culture that was created by them, that is in the wind. And that's kind of sad. I mean, I even had an experience where I went to India and I was teaching my experience to the people out there, and they were looking at me like they wanted to fight because they thought that I was wrong. They were like,
Like,
"Who are you to come here and teach us about locking?" And I'm like, "How old are you?" "Oh, I'm 24."
but what was wrong for them?
So they didn't really accept that there was a different flavor that came out of London. They were like, "Oh, but it looked like Valley style." And funny enough, we just read a whole post on Valley style that some people say that it doesn't exist. But what I do think, and that might be so, but what I do think is that if you look at a country as United States of America, there's so many trends and ways of moving in different cities. Everybody have their own take on things and flavors. So, as much as I do agree with a lot of the things that was, posted, um, I will acknowledge that there's different flavors from different places. That's just, the nature of life, because you have different cultures and trends in different places, and all these effects on how you're moving. But that doesn't, take away from the original style or the fact that it is locking. It's just, it's just a flavor of it. But
Yeah,
they didn't accept that, and so they were like, they were reacting in a way that I perceived as being very, very disrespectful, especially from somebody with lack of knowledge, that haven't traveled, that haven't done much, that's very young, but think they know what's up because, yeah, they have watched a lot of videos or
well, that's crazy to me, because first of all, you are talking about people who didn't travel, who don't have that many knowledge or maturity to talk about things. And compared to that, I can tell you that I don't know, maybe 2 years ago or something. If I'm not wrong, I think Willow took your class. I don't know if it was in Scandinavia or whatever, but I think he took your class, and he was like, yeah, it was super interesting, and all of that. Um, I don't know if it was in an event that Rob One organized. Is that possible?
yeah,
Did
yeah,
you
the fun
did you
camp, yeah.
yeah.
He did these fun camps, really cool. Like Rob One really did a great service to the community
But
in Stockholm.
were you in the same year as Willow?
I was, yeah, I
Yeah,
believe
so
that
it
was
was that.
in
I think it was that.
16, yeah,
So it's
2016.
it's 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 funny. It's funny. I mean, Willow is Willow, and if Willow goes and take your class, and says that is super interesting, you're wondering like what the fuck the other guy who doesn't know shit.
It's
I
just
mean,
young
but
people.
but
It was a, sorry to cut you. I mean, it was an experience that stood out because I haven't experienced that before. I was literally like, wow, is this really happening? I never experienced that before. But mind you, that I'm also like out on the other side of the world, in a place where, I don't know, they maybe just have a few sources of information that they believe to be the right information, and one of them was actually lock in for life, not to try to create a situation.
well,
But I just like, I want to encourage young people to have an open mind, and to much rather focus on their experience. And if you don't know so much about something, just do your research. Try to save your money so you can travel. I know that's not possible right now, but hopefully the world would open up again. Be curious, and open-minded, and don't think you know everything, because the world is a big place. It's small, but it's also a big place. Yeah.
true. True, man. But I really think that there is a huge difference by saying that there is a different flavor, and saying that you create your style. See, and the way you use words can be very disrespectful. I mean, we are all guests in this
Culture.
culture, right?
Absolutely.
Doesn't
Yeah.
matter your race.
Yeah.
Just the fact that you don't come from the same generation, on the same or the same city, you in some way you are a guest. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so the thing is, if there is like we were talking about this just before with my people, with Team Rocket and all that, there is and Willow was the one who told that, and uh, I felt that he very is very accurate. The way he said is, he said, okay, but there is like two types of guests. There is the one who comes to dinner at your place and brings the dessert, and is very polite. And there's the other one who comes to your place, sits in the couch with the foot on the table, and fucks your wife.
That's funny.
But see, I mean, we were joking, but the way you do it, the way you say it, can be very disrespectful, and that, man, I'm sorry, that's the fucking truth. There is people, they are just in this community to consuming and claiming credit when they never brought nothing to the game.
Yeah.
See, that's the problem is is when you start claiming that you did this and that, and you create this, and you create nothing. You have the way you learn, and because you're from I don't know, Spain or China, you had to move in another way because you are like you are, and you brought a different flavor to this dance in the same way. Like I said before, a penguin brought his own flavor, but we are talking about flavor. We are not talking about creating another style. It's locking. Locking is locking. And from the moment that you claim being a locking dancer, I mean, it's the dance that you do. It doesn't make sense to me for a karate guy going in and starts to do karate competitions and start saying, okay, I'm in this competition, but I have my own karate. I mean, if you're in the karate competition, I mean, I don't know. Just there is some stuff that doesn't make sense. But at the same way, I totally defend that there is a lot of cool shit that happen in Europe that it's too bad for us to not use them and acknowledge them.
I mean, there is a curiousness to like know about like different, approaches to the style that we're talking about now. I hear from different dancers, and what I do is actually my mentor lives in Sweden, in Stockholm, is that I push them toward him. It's not that I don't want to share or I don't want to teach, but as long as this guy is around, I like to push them in that direction, so they can learn from the source that I had, And he had another, so he can explain his own story. I can actually connect you to him so you can do this
Cool.
with
Yes.
him.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
And he can express his own experience. So, yeah, I just lost my train of thought there for a minute. But I think with young people, it's important to be honest, in your expression. It's important to allow yourself to be yourself. Just like you were saying about the original lockers, they were all individuals. They were all dancing very differently, and maybe the easiest moves was the ones that they were doing together because that's what everybody could do, which have become the standard
Yeah.
you
Yeah. Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's very interesting. So like try to, one thing I do really enjoy when I see somebody like Firelog or Hurricane is that they are, you know, just free. They
Yes.
just do what they want, but it's still very clear that it's locking. And you
Exactly.
have a lot of others. I think Candyman is a great example of
Yes.
a super phenomenal dancer, and P-Lock, obviously,
Yes.
Willow, yourself,
Mm.
and it's just a joy to see. So I feel that the negative lashback from, dancers in the community are more than often people that are struggling to first be themselves,
Mm.
but also don't have the level that they desire yet. Maybe in time they will get, or they try to claim some sort of role as an authority
Mm.
to monetize their actual, style.
Mm.
And so these are people that I'm personally feel are creating problems in the culture,
Mm.
and should be checked.
Mm.
And they don't want to hear it. They're so they're so consumed by themselves and their ego and their mission that they don't really want to listen to anybody unless they're really in their face, and then they will still go about their business,
Mm.
you know. And this is interesting. I don't know how that can be dealt with. I don't think. I think it will always be around. I think maybe that's a part of the balance,
Mm. Mm.
that you just have that in the culture. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. The thing is that uh, what I was trying to say is at some point I had another conversation with b boys this time a couple of years ago, and a friend of mine remind me that a lot of b-boys from US were studying the pioneers in Europe, right? Because we have like great b-boys from the late 80s, early 90s, that made a difference, right? And they are
Mm.
huge influence all over the world. And the thing is that the Europeans were forgetting about them. They were looking at like the contemporary b-boys from the US, and they are forgetting about their own history, right? And it's in that way. I mean, I think it's just a matter of ego and being smart and open mind, and remind yourself that in your local stuff a lot of cool shit happen also, and you should be proud of it. And the fact that
Absolutely.
the fact that you are proud of it and you are able to, I mean, we all know, and that's the one of the version that we get of it. I don't have the second version of it, that Shin Reaction fucked up a little bit the situation with the tape Underground Dance Master. The version that we got of it, I mean that I got of it, is that they went to speak with Bugalu Sam and Don, and they said, yeah, we're gonna do this to promote you guys. I mean, that's what Don told me, right? I never spoke with one of the Chain Reaction guys about it, so I don't know their version, but whatever. What Don told me is that they went to him, and they say that they wanted promote him by doing this tape, and at the end they did a tape where they put Don, they put Sam, and then they put them in the middle, and they sell the tape for, I don't know, super expensive, and they didn't give any money to Don, and they didn't promote Don at all. Actually, it was just a way for them to get some credits by putting them in the middle of the creators, right? So, but so, okay, they did that, right? But they had their dance, the way they moved, and all that. And I remember being at the master camp with Oscar, and he showed me a combination, and he was not doing really like wrist twirls. He was just pumping his feet and going back, doing a back clap or whatever. And he was I saw the combination. I was like, that's fresh. The movement itself is fresh. I don't care where it comes from. I'm not talking about political problems. Just the movement itself, it was fresh. And then he told me, I learned that from Chain Reaction. I said, okay, it's fresh anyway. I don't care. So that's what I mean. There is, like you said. I mean, when you were talking about Firelock, Hurricane, Candyman, Pillock, Willow. I mean, so many people. Even the girls from Russia, Mosquitoes. When I saw them the first time, I mean, they were fresh. I'm sorry, I don't care if you're from Russia, whatever. They were fresh, and I
That's what I'm
mean,
saying. Like, sorry, I mean, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, have an open mind. If you like something, don't try to don't try to be politically correct and say, oh, I can't like it because this is not this or that. It's such a restriction of freedom, and I've come across, there's like, it seems like there's a whole wave of young people, or like people in the mid 20s, uh, you know, just really absorbed with the politics of the culture, much rather than being a practitioner, but this is their way of being a practitioner. And I see it a lot with people that this is my perspective, that I don't think maybe are doing so well as dancers. Then they compensate with being really good on history,
word.
and then they can tear people down that are really good or have, a following, or people like them. Oh yeah, but they're not really original. So, you're wrong in liking them. This whole like way of slandering people that are actually putting in the work and contributing to the culture, I find very distasteful and disappointing. So there's definitely needed some dialogues, and I guess it should come from the adults. But if the adults are not being respected because the value system is out the window, it's very tough. But I think that a part of the solution is maybe doing things like this, because maybe one or two is going to be like open to reason and be
Mm,
like, okay, that's food for thought,
mm.
and can maybe inspire someone to think differently. But I'm not sitting here with the solution. I'm just expressing what I see.
Yeah, man. I think that there's a huge difference. I mean, when I started, it was all about being cool and finding fresh moves. All right, And what we were defending, we were defending being from the street. I mean, I'm talking about me. I don't know about the other ones. I'm talking about me. What I was defending, it was being from another, because the thing is that I was born in Portugal, and when I was 4, I moved to Switzerland, and I stayed there until I was 15, and then I moved back to Portugal. I did what I did in the hip hop community, and then I went back again to Switzerland, and now I'm back again to Portugal. But whatever. So I'm in Switzerland, I'm a Portuguese kid. I'm a poor Portuguese kid from the streets. Okay, that's what I am over there, and you feel it everywhere. I feel it when I take the bus, and the old Swiss people are looking at me like I was like something that doesn't belong there. Okay, and I'm with my friends, and what you need to know is that, like, in my classroom we had like only maybe 3, 4 or 5 Swiss kids. The other ones were all from different countries and religions and colors and everything. And all those people, the street people, we were all the same. We were all in the same boat. We didn't care about colors or religions or whatever. And we were all into hip hop. So we were defending that. But what we were looking for was being cool. No, I don't care if I don't have your money, if I don't have your possibilities to go and take some dance classes in some kind of school. I don't need all that. I have the music. I don't have your money, but I can still look fresh, and I can dance better than you. So that was what we were defending. And we didn't really care about the history. I mean, we were kids. It was just like, we need to be better than the other ones, and maybe one day being treated as equal. So all that motivated me a lot when I was a kid. But now I can tell you that 1 year ago, when with Team Rocket we went to LA to record a documentary. We were with all the pioneers, right? And the conversation start really switch very fast once we start talking with the first day, the first interview with the OG Skitter Rabbit. And suddenly we are not anymore only in a dance thing, we are more into a social thing. Okay, and we knew a lot of stuff already, but never that deep. Okay, and I can tell you that by being there, by talking with all of them, when I already knew a lot of stuff, it changed totally my motivation. And it was also cool. I mean, it was 2 different motivations. The one that I got when I was a kid, that I really didn't care, it was just about being cool and looking fresh and dance the best you can, no matter what. And then being a grown up and being with the originals, and going more deeper into this phenomenon. And I don't know, both were good motivations. That's what I'm trying to say. So I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. Actually, I don't have any conclusion to that.
I think it's important that there's an effort being made to bridge the gap between the generations. It is important to be able to communicate effectively with people that are younger and people that are older. That there needs to be effective communication between both, because I don't want to put out the notion that, the youth are disrespectful or not, going about this in the right way and wrong all the time. I think for me, the youth is the truth and the future, and we need to encourage and uplift them in any way possible, much rather than tear them down. But, as a young individual growing up, there's a lot to learn. You constantly hang these pictures up of how you think the world look like, and then they fall down. This happens to you a lot, especially, from your teenagers and up, where you think you know everything. So I think this is also a very natural process of being a young individual in this experience that we call life.
Mm,
Um, but I do think that, as an adult or adults in this culture, that we should really be a part of the solution in any way that we can
for sure.
to make it a better and more healthy culture.
But I was thinking about all that, and it reminds me of a funny episode with Sugar Pop that actually worked for me. Before I brought Sugar Pop to Portugal, I did a Storm class. Storm came to a German college in Lisbon. Can remember can remind me can remember the year exactly, but it was around, I don't know, 2001 or something. Don't remember. And so my locking was pretty similar to Storm style, right? And when I when I brought Sugar Pop, and he saw me dance for the first time, then I went to talk to him, and I was like, "So, what do you think?" And he was like, "What is this shit that you're doing? What are you doing with your hands? That's not locking." And he was pretty hard with me, right? And I was like, try to understand. Then I danced with him. I took his classes. We exchanged a little bit. We spoke, and then once I got to my practices, I was using all the information that I got from him, and so it was super hard on me, right? And like 1 year after that, when I went to LA, I met him again. He saw me dance, and he saw me, and he said, "Now you got it." And what I mean is that uh, sometimes when people are hard on you, once you get it, it feels even better. So uh, I, I don't know what's the best way sometimes to approach teenagers, because sometimes they are doing some bullshit and saying a lot of shit also. So I don't know what works the best. I mean, you go there, you teach a class to some teenagers, and they are cocky, and they are like, "Yeah, you don't know shit because we know the truth. We did a class with this and that, and he said that it was not the correct way. So what you're doing is wrong." Da 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 da. And then there is another guy that goes there and say, "No, you are all wrong. You don't know shit. You need to do it this way." He's not as open-minded as you, but in a certain way he is able to correct them because he's more like harder. So
Hmm.
it's always, I don't know, there is a balance between all that. I don't know if there is like a correct way to do it. It's very sensitive, but at the end, if you're an individual smart enough, open-minded enough, you know how to filter all that and take the best for your dance. And being someone who's closing doors, who doesn't want to listen to you because you have a different approach, is not going to help you at all. Doesn't matter the guy is in front of you saying that you should be only like this and not another way, or if you have another guy who says like you're free, you just need to learn this and then you can. It doesn't matter if you don't know, if you're not smart enough to put filters on that. It's not good for you.
Hmm. So like, yeah, obviously I know of the character that you just, spoke of, and he has a certain way to come across, and that's his way. He's basically himself, um, which is something that actually encourage people to be. But I also think that it's important to make an effort to be a part of the solution.
Exactly.
And on both sides, you know.
Hmm.
And now I'm not talking about, mentors or teachers or elders, but also the youth. You know, try to be a part of the solution. What is it that you want to achieve? This is always very interesting. You know, what is the end game? What is the goal here? It's to develop as an artist for one, right? Or as an individual. And the fact of the matter is that we all approach life and look at life through our spectacles,
Mm.
that are for each person unique. But we also dance how we are. This is a way that we recognize each other. When somebody is actually being themselves and they go out there and they contribute either in a competition or a performance or whatnot, it get noticed. We all see it. We
True.
can't really put a finger on it, but we are like, wow, well, what was that? And that happens when you allow yourself to feel much rather than think, and to be yourself. So this is what we all thrive against, or towards, to become a unique voice of artistry within the culture. And how do you cultivate that? How do you develop that? And that is interesting to me, And yeah, I think there's certain settings that you can create as a teacher that can help to cultivate that. But the work will always lay with the individual.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah. So that's what
Yeah.
happened to you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was two different approach, and I must say that in some way I identify myself more with the Sugar Pops approach because it was more raw. It was more, like I told you, I was raised in the street. I was used to. I mean, I'm gonna tell you another story just for you to understand my mindset, right? I was before, like in '98, I was practicing my flares, and I had my old cousin that came to one of my practice, and so he was into breaking, but not that much. He's just a very very smart guy, and so I'm practicing my flares. I try once, twice, and then I go to him like, "What you think?" And he told me something about my hands and my feet or my hip or whatever. He gave me an advice, right? And I went there, I tried again, I execute his advice, and it worked. My flares got better. So I went to talk with him again, and he slapped me in the face. He was like, "Are you stupid or what? I'm not into breaking. Do you really need for a guy like me to come to a practice to open your eyes? Are you stupid or what?" But he was not like at some time he was hard on me, but he was at the same time was kind of funny. He was not like trying to beat me or whatever, but he did slap me in the face, and he was like, "You don't need me, man, just open your eyes." So I'm used to that, right?
Mm.
And man, I must say, I must be honest, when Sugar Pop told me that, like, "What the fuck are you doing?" I did recognize that I prefer his style. If I When it comes only to aesthetics, I was doing what I was doing because I didn't know better, and I remember doing some kind of similar movement, similar to the scubots, but I was with both of my hands open like this, and he told me like, "What the fuck, your hands are open like this? Are you grabbing a ball in?" I mean, and I didn't have an answer, but aesthetically, that's true, man. He was right. It didn't work that well, in my opinion. Once I was able to compare both of the formats, right? So I did prefer his style, and I work on it. And then when someone is hard on you, when he tells you that you got better, it feels more real. The compliment is more real.
Mhm.
If you have someone that is always with you saying that you're cool, you just maybe need to work on this and that, but you're great, you have a good potential, nice, nice, nice. I mean, for me, it doesn't work that much, but it's personal. Once again, and like you said, and I think it's super important. At the end, you need to understand what the goal of the person is and what his intention is, and is the most important. And you can tell, like you said before, that you can tell easily by seeing someone dance if he's being real, if he's being himself or not, and that's super super important, like you said before.
I think that tough love is also a part of the solution, and being like you also contribute in, my point. Sorry, I'm rambling here. Um, what I was saying earlier is that everybody is contributing. Everybody's
Yes, yes, yes,
contribution
yes.
is important, and even the bad things, because it creates
Exactly,
a balance. It
exactly,
initiates some conversations that we have now. A part of the conversation is due to the fact that there's this, difference in the culture. There's people
exactly.
that show us a way that makes us understand. I don't want to be like that. So
Exactly.
so there's a benefit from all of this, so I'm not really being a judge and jury here and saying that there's only one way or a certain way. I have been exposed to a lot of tough love myself from my mentors. I also grew up in a rough neighborhood and had to fight a lot as a young kid. And I think that dance for me became like a way out of a certain lifestyle that I had when I was very young
Mm,
that was more positive. I had an interesting conversation with one of my really good friends called Bryce Johnson,
mm.
Professor Locke, the other day, where we were talking about everything that's going on right now with, the oppression of people of color,
Yes.
etc. And then it led us into the culture because, I mean, it's all connected. And what happens with a lot of individuals that are, part of this culture is that they make what they do their identity.
Mm,
They connect their identity with this thing called dance. And according to him, it was never supposed to be that. It's just something you do. It's you are who you are in your core essence. That has nothing to do with dance or hip hop culture or whatnot, but something that is just you. Um, and I think that sometimes we try to escape as individuals via something else. It could be playing a video game, it could be dancing, it could be whatever. It to escape from ourselves. I think it's important to face yourself as a human being and also understand yourself. What is the reasons behind what you're doing? What is it that you try to achieve? And that's sometimes forgotten. In the midst of everything. But I agree that there's definitely different approaches, and what works for someone might not work for someone else.
exactly, exactly.
But as long as you are honest, I feel that like you pretty much get away with anything if it's justified and you are honest. Then the world will most likely just be like, okay. But when you are pretentious or you trying to be like someone else that you're not, and that goes for your dance style as well. When you're not yourself, then people can't feel it because you're not you. You're someone else. And that goes for behavior, that goes from dance, it goes for anything in life. Just be yourself.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think it's super interesting what your friend told you, but in another way, I don't feel that dancing is something that I do. Or hip hop is something that I do. Is something that I live. I mean, when I wake up in the morning and I go to my closet and I pick up the things that I want, that I want to dress. I don't think like what's more hip hop, what is less hip hop. I just dress how I like to dress. Then if it's hip hop or not, It's the other people that are gonna say, okay, this is hip hop, or you look like a hip hop guy or whatever. I mean, now is a little bit blurry, but I can tell you that in the '90s, you can tell pretty much the difference between a hip hop guy and a rock guy or house guy or whatever. Um, but I mean, everything that I do, even in design or music or whatever, I do because what I like. I never think like I'm gonna do this because it's more hip hop or less hip hop, and I have to cultivate that image of me. I just do what I like, and then people recognize that this locking or hip hop or funk or whatever. I'm not the one who's saying that. Okay, it's like, for example, it makes me think about another thing that could be interesting to talk with you about. It is when it comes to music. When people say like, okay, this is not locking music, and I'm every time that I listen people saying that this is not locking music, uh, there is just a thought that comes in my mind all the time, that I don't think that any artists who create those songs back then thought about locking dancers, or in the I mean, for locking it could be more complicated to understand, but when it comes to breaking, I don't think that any song that contains a break inside, a dope break inside, it could be a James Brown break or a Ceron break or whatever break. um I don't think any of them thought like, okay, let's do this break in this song because it could be cool for the b-boys. They just did music. It was not b-boying music. It was not locking music. It was not popping. The artists who create the songs didn't do those songs for a type of dance. So I'm always like, I don't know, but what the fuck is a locking song? Because when you look at Soul Train, they were getting down with all type of songs that were playing in the show. So I don't know. It's just funny. I don't know what you think about it.
Well, I lock to anything, any music that I like. I lock to house, hip hop. And going back to Out of Control, they even did a performance at that TV show to rock music, doing locking, and it was one of the dopest things I've seen. Um, so yeah, it goes again back to be open-minded. I mean, like the beautiful thing about hip hop culture is that it's so innovative, and constantly, developing and have seeped into everything from fashion to music to um, language, and you know the way you carry yourself and behave. So to say that, to go back to the conversation that I was referring to earlier,
Yes.
um, with Bryce, is that it shouldn't be your identity. I'm not saying it should not be your identity. I do think that it's attached to a lot of people's identity. This is how they carry themselves, or how they think. Among other things. It's yeah. Well, look at me. I'm wearing a cap. I'm dressed in a certain way. I'm sending a signal. And it has to do with my experience throughout life. I like to dress a certain way, but occasionally I also dress differently. So, but yeah, it can. I'm sure that can be debated. Like, is it your identity or is it something that you do? I don't know.
Yeah, of course, and that's the interesting part of it, is
Mm,
those exchanges. That's why I like to talk that much, and with different people, and I mean, is I feel rich when I do it.
mm,
I like to exchange different opinions, and I'm not really married to my opinions. It's just ideas that have an evolution, and so today I feel this way. Tomorrow maybe I will feel different. I don't know,
yeah.
but yeah, man. I like this. I like this.
Yeah, it's cool. It's needed. I think that these type of initiatives are good. I see it happening in a lot of communities within our community as a whole. And I think it's really good. I think it's great that people speak their mind and are being heard, and people get a chance to, uh, pick someone's mind about certain topics that's been involved in the culture for a number of years.
Mm,
Um, and by all means, I'm not saying that anything I believe is set in stone and is the right way
exactly.
to think. Um, I'm just speaking from my life experience and what I went through and what I see now. But I gotta say on a positive note that I feel that it's bigger than ever, and it's super great to see so much talent and how fast the progression is. I mean, like you have you know, I feel like now every year these individuals crawling out of the woodwork and I'm just like, wow, where did this person come from? This
Yeah,
is so cool, it's so
it
fresh,
is.
and that is truly inspiring, and uplifting. And if it does that to me, I'm sure that it does that to a whole lot of other people as
Of
well.
course.
So that's a very beautiful thing that I personally appreciate a lot.
Yes, man. And actually, to answer you, um, about what you just said, the name of this podcast is, it means my truth in Portuguese, and the idea was born because I had still a lot of people asking me about what happened in the early 90s in Portugal, because a lot of people are saying that I was the guy who is responsible for the rebirth of hip hop dancers here in Portugal, because everything was dead when I came back in '95. They danced in the '80s, but then everybody stopped. Uh, and I was like, shit. Everybody is asking me the same question. I really need to do maybe a video or whatever, but I don't feel that my answers correspond to the to the absolute truth of it. It's just my experience. It's just my truth of it.
Yeah.
So that's the name that I'm gonna use for the video, is gonna be my truth. But then when I thought a little bit more about it, I was like, but my truth is not that important. It's just my truth. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have different guests, and I wanted to know their truth. That so like you said, everything is some kind of contribution to this culture, and I think it's just beautiful. And one of the most beautiful things actually that I felt in all those years in this culture, I mean in all my life, because I don't see my life out of it, uh, is that every time that I was traveling, and it happened actually the last time that I went to LA and I was talking with all those locking pioneers, but it happened also uh, in all the countries that I went, and I talked with people from the community, is that there is a lot of similar street codes. There is a lot of common experience. No matter if you are from Sweden or France or Italy, we have all very similar histories, and I think it's just beautiful the way people connect in a universal way, no matter where you come from.
Mm. Absolutely. I mean, this lifestyle of mine have brought me all over the world and connected me with people from all walks of life, and I'm truly grateful for that. I think that's something that artistry can do, is that it just connects you with people all over the world, and it's amazing. And I think that we, as a collective, have a very strong voice, and there's nothing more that I would like to see than unity. And and peace, and also respect for the differences, not be so hell-bent on things needs to be a certain way. Of course, there's facts that needs to be, respected, such as this culture emerged from the Latin and Afro-American community, and where certain creators of different styles, those things I think are super important to pay homage to and always respect. Um, but don't knock on the contributors, that are, doing great works within the culture just because they don't fit your narrative or what you believe to be right. Try to be a little bit open-minded, so the culture can grow in a healthy direction. I'm not saying that we should allow everything to happen and create new avenues of sub styles to the styles that are there. I'm not an advocate for that at all. But we are all different. And we're all in this together at the same time. So maybe a little bit more of patience, and understanding. It wouldn't hurt, in my opinion.
Truth, man. It was a beautiful. It's a beautiful way to finish this conversation, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, man.
My pleasure.
All right, bro. All
Let's
right.
keep in touch, man. Peace.
All right. Peace.
Peace.